Do family gatherings leave you feeling drained, anxious, or reaching for a drink just to get through them? For many of my clients, these moments are especially tough because of the emotional strain of navigating a narcissistic mother. If you've decided to cut back or eliminate alcohol, it can be really hard to imagine coping in situations when you're going to be around your mom without it. But there is hope, and my next guest is here to guide you. I am thrilled to welcome Cristy Murray, a certified Catholic neurocoach and a compassionate expert in helping daughters heal from the pain of being raised by narcissistic mothers. Cristy understands this struggle firsthand, having grown up in a similar environment herself. Her personal experiences combined with her deep expertise make her uniquely qualified to empower women to heal, reclaim their identity, and thrive. Through her innovative neurocoaching approach, Christie equips her clients with the tools to break free from limiting beliefs and unhealthy patterns while building emotional resistance and greater self awareness. She is the founder of Blue Veil Wellness and also hosts the podcast Maternal Narcissists Unmasked, where she shares strategies, inspiring stories, and actionable advice for overcoming the challenges of narcissistic family dynamics. Welcome, Christy. It is so good to have you here.
Hi, Christy. Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, could you please explain to my listeners what narcissism is and what it is not? I think we've all been hearing a lot about it. The word comes up in conversation much more than it used to, and it would be so helpful to have some clarification from you.
Yes, definitely. And I think that is the first step, just knowing what it is. So the word narcissism, like you said, nowadays it's coming up more and more. It's because we are becoming more aware of it. So narcissist generally pertains to someone who is more grandiose, someone who likes to put themselves on a pedestal, always talks about me, all about me. And, when you talk to people like these, the conversation generally turns back around to them. Like you are because of what they did, and you wouldn't be where you are if not for them. Now, the tricky part is there's two types of it, maybe even more, but let's narrow it down to two. So the grandiose one is the one I just talked about. And then the other kind is the covert. And that is the more dangerous one because it's tricky to recognize. And it's more tricky if your mother is a covert narcissist, because this type of mother, she would do everything seemingly for you, but really she's doing it to put attention to herself. Like they could be termed as the helicopter parent, I'm just really concerned about my daughter, but really they're concerned for their daughter because their daughter is an extension of them. Their daughter or their son is an extension of them. It reflects back to them. And it really doesn't matter how the children feels because, once again, as a narcissist, it all comes back around. It's because of how it makes the mother look. It's because of how it makes the mother feel and like what the mother wants. So the children end up becoming just pawns in this sick game.
That's so interesting. So it's kind of a fine line I'm hearing between like a good parent who wants to be involved, who wants to be there for their kids, wants to make sure that they're, getting done what they want, but at the same time, if if I'm understanding you correctly, it's that type of parent who seemingly on the outside does all those things, but really is doing it for selfish reasons.
Yes, exactly. If I can give an example, right now, me and my colleague were talking about sports yesterday, about the parents in sports and how you cheer for your children. So there's a lot of parents that are on this side who really get excited and cheering for our kids and, motivating them, encouraging them to keep going. And then there's one of my colleagues actually said that her mom got really excited and like she can hear her cheering and it embarrassed her. So after the game, she had talked to her mom and said, you embarrassed me. You were really loud. I can hear you there. And the mom felt for her daughter. And she said,
Mhm.
I'm so sorry that you were hurt by how I was acting. I was just really excited. Well, that is an example of a good non-narcissistic relationship because the mother was actually open to listening to her daughter. Now, a narcissistic mother, you would get a different response. The narcissistic mom would respond with, well, you should have done better. And I was being loud because I was cheering for you. And I really don't care what other people think of me. So that's like the big difference there. So gaslighted the daughter, gaslighted the behavior. And it's like, okay, never mind the daughter's feelings.
I think I get that, and I am one of those moms that cheers for my kids, but I
Mm-hmm.
have been told by my kids to not do that, so it makes me feel better that I didn't, like, keep doing it or make
Mm-hmm.
it seem like I had to keep doing it. It's just I am like, I don't wanna be that, but I do understand what you're saying about it being more I guess it would be more prideful about them and what their child's actions, how that reflects on
Mm-hmm.
them maybe?
Yeah, it's the motivation behind why you're doing what you're doing for your children. If you truly want to do what's good for them, and then include them and really treat them as people, as your children, individuals, children of God who have their own feelings, then that's different rather than, well, I really don't care what you think because I just want you to do this and I just want you to do well.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So, you've had your own experience with a narcissistic mother. This is going to be a really difficult conversation. They keep saying that. But can you please share your experience and then how not only you became aware of it, but then you were able
Mhm.
to overcome that?
Yeah, so I was not aware of it until I was like over 40. It was really just recent. And I realized it because I so the effect on me is that because I became a high achiever. I wanted to do, and do, and then I went into people pleasing mode, and then I wanted to do it all because I was raised to help people, to give everything, what I have. And to me, that was normal, and it's good to always be helpful to people. But then because I was raised by a narcissist, I had no boundaries. And I would feel bad if, like people's problems became my responsibility and I would feel bad if I couldn't fix it for them.
Mm,
Because I was raised to be the fixer, to fix the narcissist's needs and their feelings. And I thought that was just the norm until it started taking a toll on me. So I actually just enrolled in a productivity course because I was launching an online health business. And it's funny how it's amazing, not funny. It's amazing how God works to heal you. Um, so how that course went was, I couldn't do this because of this, and then digging deeper, it all came down to, well, the barrier was because I was raised a certain way, and it all like came to my mother. So to me, that was an aha moment that I was like, oh my gosh, everything I do and like all, I shouldn't say all the problems because there are some good things. So she became the root cause of the challenges and the difficulties. So then I did some more work and it became to like I was giving everything because that's how I was conditioned to.
mm,
But then my own feelings and needs were non existent. And I was made to feel guilty if I would bring my own feelings and needs to the table.
mm, mhm. That's That provides even more clarity because it's almost like, yeah, you're a high achiever, that's great, but at the same time, it wasn't like you wanting to necessarily be that way, it was you being that way so like, to make your mom happy, to ensure that she wasn't going to be mad at you or feel let down by you or something like that, so your performance, the way you acted essentially was, like you said, you were the one that had to fix things. So if your mom was unhappy, you had to fix it with your achieving, with your, doing and serving and all of that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And then, being under the constant scrutiny and criticism, like if things don't go her way, then the tantrum happens.
Hmm.
So I was just constantly like in the background trying to fight for her, fix things for her, and do things for her too. And then now that I have children, I think the eye opener for me was my children were, she would start to treat my children a certain way to where I started seeing that, wait a minute, that's how she treated me when I was a kid. And then I saw how my children were acting. And then I remembered how I was when I was a child. So then that's when I decided, okay, this cycle needs to stop. And this is not reaching my children. So I started my journey to healing on my own. And it didn't happen overnight because even like the first step is being aware of things. And then the second step is accepting things.
Mm.
So then even if you know what it is, you've accepted them, there's still that part of you because your neural pathways are conditioned a certain way. That's your norm. You're going against your norm. So really, you need God's grace. You need God to tell you that, no, that is not okay. And this is how I'll help you heal.
Hmm. So, how is your relationship with your mother now? Did you have to set boundaries to where you wouldn't see her as often? I mean, I love that you were able to. It's hard when you're the one going through it, but then when you can see
Mhm.
it on the outside, like you saw it happening from the outside as she was doing the same thing to your children. And then you're like,
Mhm.
wait a second. And it kind of like gave you those emotions, probably like from
Mhm.
when you were a kid. And you're like, wait, no, this is not happening. So, how did your understanding of what was going on, seeing that happening with your kids, and then, I'm sure that you still have a desire to have a relationship with your mom. How did that setting boundaries and everything affect your relationship? And
Mhm.
is it something that's fixed today or is it ongoing?
It's about 90%. I mean, it's not fixed, it's better
Mm.
because people do not change their personalities and people don't change overnight. And we only can take care of ourselves. So it was really helpful that, she moved out because she used to live with me. So when I was seeing all these things, she used to live with me. So that was a big help. And even then, I didn't even realize. I was still asking myself, like, why was she saying those things? Why would she, like, do that? And it was actually, I was in adoration one day and I was really troubled. And my phone dinged and something popped up. I don't have my notifications on. And at this time in adoration, it just popped up and someone posted that for you daughters raised by narcissistic moms, this is the book that helped me. So then, okay, I bought the book when my hour was done, and it's an audiobook that I listened to, and I could have written the whole book. It like shed a light to everything. And actually, I was talking to a forgiveness coach in my podcast a few weeks back, and she helps daughters raised by narcissistic moms all over the world. And she said it doesn't matter what part of the world you're from and what culture you're from, we all have the same stories.
Mm. Mhm.
So that really opened my eyes to, wow, this is real. I'm not just making this up because I was feeling guilty that, wow, I shouldn't feel this way. And why do I feel this way? I'm a bad daughter and what's wrong with me? But just hearing validation from other daughters who went through the same thing. Okay, so it's a thing. So then I started doing more research about it. And like the first step with me was when she would call and she would be in panic and be in her emergency and expecting me to jump up and do the fixing for her. The first step for me is to calm down and just say, no, we are both adults and I should not be your fixer. You're
Mhm.
capable yourself. It was really wonderful for me. I just looked at the facts and I didn't get emotional about things. And I just said, okay, well, let me think about this. So I hung up and then I thought about things. And then before the day ended, I just said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I made her accountable for it. And then
That's
when
great.
that,
That had to be really hard and really scary to do.
it was, because then you feel the guilt that if things get messed up, I mean, you always feel like it's your fault and you're the one to be blamed for it, even though it's really not your fault. And you're not the only person responsible for it.
From your experience with helping other women with this, with realizing and then figuring out how to set boundaries and do all of that, have you, or I guess I have noticed as a sobriety coach, women coming to me where they know that they have a family gathering to go to. Their mom is, as you described, in whatever way, everybody's different, but to some level. And really, the only way that they feel like they can even get through a family situation with their mom is to cope with alcohol. Some people it's food, some people it's,
Mhm.
other thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So how would you tell a woman, like if she's going into a situation, she's decided that she's not going to overdrink, she's not going to overeat, she's not going to let her mom, you know, be that catalyst in damaging her body. Like she wants to take care of it, but yet she's still like, but then all the feelings. So how can she go
Mhm.
into those situations and face that without those coping mechanisms?
Yeah, so realize you are your own individual person, and your mother is herself, and she's always going to be the way she is, and you can't tell her what to do. You cannot tell her what not to say. She's going to say whatever she wants. And with you deciding in advance, deciding that, okay, when she says this, I'm just not going to say anything, and you don't have to engage. So like for me personally, when she started saying certain things that would trigger me, I would just say, well, I have to go because, I called you because of this. Obviously, you have a different response to it.
Mm.
So bye. So just little things like that. And like throughout months for me, just standing up for myself, because I would call her every day. And then after I hung up, I would just feel so defeated. And I'm like, why do I even call? But then there's always that need to reconnect with her. So after a few times of me saying, I have to go, I can't do that. And you really don't have to give a reason. You can just say, all right, that's how you feel. Then that's what it is. And there's no reason to keep the conversation going. You don't have to explain yourself. And it's you. I mean, you hold that power. If you choose to take that power to stop the conversation, instead of feeling like, well, they still want to talk to me. Yeah, they would, but do you want to still talk to them? And you have every right and every power to say, I'm not going to keep going with this conversation. And actually, I'm going to get some dessert in the kitchen.
Mhm.
And you can talk to other people or eat whatever you want right there.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really good because that's what I was gonna ask you next. Like, when I talk to women, a lot of times, like with my clients and things, we talk a lot about planning in advance for these situations, even planning for
Mm-hmm.
these conversations, because she's your mom and, you know pretty much like what she's gonna say, you know, like what conversation she's gonna try to loop you in on or where she's gonna try to
Mm-hmm.
guilt trip you or,
Yes.
all of those things. I think one of the things that is coming clear to me is like when there is an issue, if you bring it up to her, she's going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then put it on you, that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like planning in advance, which I always tell my clients as they're trying to reduce or eliminate alcohol anyway, but plan for those conversations, like know what you want to say, know, have an exit strategy. And that doesn't
Yes.
necessarily mean like leaving the house, although it can if it gets that bad. But
Mm-hmm.
having an exit strategy, kind of like what you said, like, I'm going to go get dessert or I'm going to go see what my kids are doing, whatever it is, have those outs to be able to, essentially care for your own mental health and yourself in those situations so that you can kind of calm down. So you gave an example of that, but do you have any other tips for how to kind of calm yourself or care for yourself in those situations just to kind of get through it
Mm-hmm.
without some big, blow up or, whatever?
So then, like when you said, they gaslight you, and the mothers would say, well, that's not how I remember it.
Mhm.
So then at that point, you can say, well, that's how you remember it. I just remember it differently.
Mhm.
And if they try to get things out of you, because they will try to push your buttons, because they will try to get a rise out of you. And then when you lose it, then they'll turn the spotlight and the camera on you saying, like, look at how she's acting.
Mm.
So have these phrases of words just say that, well, that's not how I remember it. I've talked to you about this, and I'm not going to go any further with this. And if that's what you want to do, that's on you, but I'm not going to take part in it.
Mm.
So if you end the conversation with a period and not even asking for what they want or asking them for their opinion, and like, this is how I feel, and that's done. And this is what I want, and that's done.
Mhm.
Hopefully, eventually they'll say, okay, we're done.
They'll get the hint.
Yes,
They'll get used to the new normal.
exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, you have to make your own new normal because they're used to, they're like puppet masters. They're used to like knowing what strings to pull.
Mhm.
But then your job is really to strengthen your own muscles and then cut those strings so then you can stand up on your own and not depend on them manipulating you.
Mhm. And then, so what are some ways, because I'm assuming you're still kind of going through your own healing process. It's like an ongoing thing. But what would
Mhm.
you recommend to women to do, or how to, you mentioned a book, and then I know you have your podcast and you work with women, but what do you recommend for women as a way of healing those wounds from childhood trauma
Mm.
in a healthy way instead of like turning to, attachments like alcohol
Mhm.
or other things?
Surround yourself with loving relationships. So if you surround yourself with like women who truly love their mother and who are like non-narcissists, you would know that. And it's actually when you see that kind of relationship between them and their children, you realize that, wow, that's kind of nice. And that's not how I remember my childhood. Um,
Mhm.
so then you'll start seeing that what was normalized when you're growing up is really not right. So then you'll start like being exposed to all these loving relationships, more supportive women, women who just are there truly to help nurture you and not ask for anything in return and not make you feel bad if you don't do what they want. And then actually go into adoration. If that's your time with Jesus, I can't even begin to explain how many miracles and how it'll affect you and your relationship by just spending time with Jesus in adoration.
Yeah.
And another thing is really, so knowing the science of things, like neurocoaching, I know what we're conditioned to and how neural pathways work, but I still question it because I was raised Catholic and I had that guilt. So I had to talk to a priest. And then it's really, whether it's confession or spiritual direction, that's when then you'll say like, well, no, Jesus doesn't hate me just because I feel this way about my mother. And I know I talked about setting boundaries. Boundaries sometimes can kind of backfire on you because if you look at boundaries as walls, then it has the potential of you just like you staying in a box when you like have all these four walls and then you're just isolated and then you turn into like either the eating or like other behaviors. But if you see boundaries as gates, I mean, you still see what's happening on the other side, but they can't get through. And you can step back, you can see what's coming, and you can get closer when you feel safe. But it's a gate that you can see through and then choose what you want to pass through or pass out.
That's really good. That is really good. I've never heard it explained that way, heard boundaries explained that way. And I like that because I like it being that you can still see it, that you are in control of how close or how far you get. You can open it if you want or keep it closed. I think
Hmm.
that's a really, really, I'm such a visual person, and that's such a great visual on that. So thank you for that. So if somebody is a narcissistic parent, will they always be a narcissistic grandmother? I mean, or you said that you saw that in your mom with your kids, but do you find
Mhm.
that with your clients that happens often?
I find that it really depends on the degree of the narcissism. Like there's it's like a wide spectrum. Like some would be open to change. Some would kind of feel for their children that, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I was hurting you or I was even this close. And some are just like, that's who they are and they're not willing to just even accept the fact that they're hurting you.
Mhm.
Like they would say, well, you shouldn't be too sensitive. That's why you're hurt.
Mhm.
But, as a mother, if your children are coming to you hurt, you would feel for them, right? Oh, like, how did you get hurt or did I hurt you? I'm sorry I did. Um, I hear like varying degrees. Like some when they're made aware of how their children are feeling, and then like with the proper support, then they would slowly be open to have that conversation. And some are just like, nope, that's a you problem, not me. And then you should change.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like it's kind of on a spectrum and that there's
Hmm.
some who may teeter on the verge of being narcissistic or have those tendencies, but once they realize, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was doing that. I'm so sorry." So, maybe it was something with the way that they were raised. Like, do you find that
Hmm.
women who are raised, and I don't know how your grandmother was with your mom, but do you find that passed down through generations?
Yes, definitely. That's why it is a cycle that we need to break. And then we owe it to our children to learn about it now and then start breaking that cycle because I don't remember where I heard it from because like the battles that you don't fight for your children now are the battles that your children are going to fight later on. And that's the battle that your mother didn't fight for you. That's why you're fighting it on your own right now.
Mhm.
So it's really up to us knowing what it is to take the steps towards it. So like we become that shield for our children. So we hold that shield and at the same time, I mean, we have a tough job. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, but then once you use your other hand to hold that shield and then the other hand to either hold that sword or, protect you from the other side.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
because they're not going to accept their fault that they're wrong because that's how their mothers raised them. And in their mind, they will say, well, I turned out okay.
Mhm.
But not really if you don't have a relationship with you. And like motherhood is really not about just, getting pregnant, like giving birth and raising kids. The motherhood is about having that relationship with your children and being that mother, not just a biological. I mean, you're just a surrogate if that's all you think motherhood is.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's important what you said about breaking the cycle because what we do is like we see what things, nobody's perfect. Everybody, we
Mhm.
parent out of our wounds sometimes, but our
Yes.
job is to find that healing. And once we are healed, then we can help parent our children so that they don't have to experience those wounds. Like my children have known since a very early age about my struggles with alcohol and that I don't drink and this is why. And, so it's one of those things because it was very much in my family. Alcoholism was very much, especially on my dad's side of the family. And so I'm like, it stops with me. And this is how I'm going to take precautions to ensure that my kids, whether they drink or don't drink, have awareness around it and know like these are boundaries. If you can't have these boundaries, then it's best not to start. And
Mhm.
so with narcissism, I think that that's true too, because you're modeling motherhood to them. You're modeling what it is to be a loving, caring, very involved parent, yet at the same time, letting them be their own person and
Mhm.
respecting their feelings. So when they say, that bothers me, or I don't want to do that, like coming back to sports, it's such a big one. There was just a fight at my son's, it wasn't their basketball game, but before their basketball game. And I'm just like, parents, it's like a basketball game.
Yeah.
Like, what is not life or death? This isn't like a thing. But I think that those can be the type of parents that really are in it for themselves, make it seem like they're in it for their children. So I think if we show them like we love you no matter what, yes, we would love
Mhm.
it if you do the thing that you want to do. If you excel, that's so awesome. But really, we just want to have you enjoy it, have a great childhood, and do all those things. But I think a lot of times it's hard because we do have some children, even if they aren't raised by a narcissist, who are harder on themselves,
Mhm.
in that way to where do you do you think that that is just like a learned thing, or do you think it is something from the parenting? Like maybe they are parenting in a way that's maybe not narcissistic, but prideful,
Mhm.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like if I don't do this, then people won't think I'm a good parent.
Mhm.
But it's
Yeah, it's that shame that's coming from themselves because they
right.
somehow in their childhood they were judged, so then now they don't want their children to be judged.
Mhm.
So they're stepping over their children's feelings that, well, I don't want you to, like you said, they're parenting from their wound. Whether they realize it or not, they have the best intentions for their children. They don't want their children hurt like they were.
Mhm. Yes. So if there's a woman that's listening and she is dealing with and she's realizing like, "Oh my goodness, yeah, I was raised by a narcissistic parent," and I'm sure there's narcissistic dads and all that, but the maternal is
Mhm.
really hurtful because that's our model, right? So
Yeah.
if she's realizing that, what are her next steps really, and how can she forgive even? And that's going to
Mhm.
take time too, right? You need to heal
Yes.
first and then forgive. So what are your some
Mhm.
of your best tips on that?
So yeah, first is really just journaling everything because it's all going to replay in your head. You're going to hear their voice in your head. Just writing things down, like even if you can remember the date. So then when you start to question yourself, like, oh no, it's just me, because you gaslight yourself as well, because you were gaslighted growing up. You're always going to blame yourself. Oh, I acted that way. That's why I was treated that way.
Right.
It's me. But if you have these records of how, you remembered it and like what the things that were said, and even if you tried to stand up for yourself and it didn't work, just keep speaking for yourself, really finding your own identity separate from your mother. And someone had told me before, or I had read somewhere, that before you were formed in your mother's womb, God knows who you are. He knows like everything about you, what you're going to say, and even how you think, even before you say it. So just taking comfort that, well, I have my own identity, and really asking God, like, who am I and who you want me to be? So then it's between you and Jesus. And your behavior is not dependent on how your mom would make you feel than what she would tell you.
Yeah. And I think that, like you mentioned before, like taking that to adoration, like sitting with Jesus on that, because yeah, I'm sure you do question yourself, like, did I remember it that way? Is it right? Am
Yes,
I like making too
exactly.
much of it?
Am I
Am I
overreacting?
right? Because yeah, the mom probably told you those things, like that didn't
Yes.
happen, or
Mm-hmm.
you never can remember things, right? So if you take that to adoration and sit with Jesus and ask him to help you remember it and just write it down and honor the way that you remembered it as that is it, and
Mm-hmm.
just know, like, I don't know, I feel like if you do it that way or do it in prayer or however
Mm-hmm.
is best, but really bringing Jesus into it is
Mm-hmm.
would be so, so powerful. It's very interesting because I've been doing I am a student of Encounter School of Ministries, and we went through an inner healing we were taught an inner healing like tool to help people, and you can walk through it with the Holy Trinity. And so God the Father is like when you have wound with your earthly father, you speak to Jesus and use that when you have an issue with your mom. So a lot of times people that have a hard time connecting with Jesus, and probably Mary, for sure Mary as well. But I thought it was
Mhm.
so interesting that people would be afraid to approach Jesus if they had a wound with their mother. And so this exercise helps them work through that. And then the Holy
Mhm.
Spirit is something that helps with like siblings and other family members. It's
Okay.
so interesting to me, and if I hadn't gone through it myself and done an inner healing session, I would have been like, "What? I don't understand it." But it's so good, and it just comes up a lot because you've mentioned Jesus so many times. So that's why
Mhm.
I think taking it to adoration, sitting in front of Jesus, gazing upon him, allowing him to gaze upon you as you're uh writing these things down and healing
Mhm.
could be so powerful.
Yes, and then I really take great comfort with the Blessed Virgin Mary and being almost, I mean, really being remothered by her. So, because when I realized that, well, my mom was like this, I'm screwed up. But really, no, we're not. That's our earthly mother. She's also human. But we always can take comfort in being mothered by the Blessed Mary
Mhm.
because she's just this mother. She's our mother. And I mean, we can take our own mothers to her too, and we can both be mothered by the Virgin Mary.
Yeah. Yes, that's such a great thing, and she is. I was it Saint Teresa or Mother Teresa that was saying, like, you say, "Blessed Mother, come and be a mother to me now," or something like that. I can't
Hmm.
remember the exact phrasing of it, but it's so beautiful, and it's such a short thing that you can say if you're struggling with those thoughts and you really are feeling maybe like my mom doesn't understand me, but the Blessed
Hmm.
Mother does, and she'll
Yeah.
wrap you in her mantle.
Mhm.
Praying the rosary, I heard somebody say one time, like, praying the rosary and holding the rosary beads in your hand or, like, holding the hands of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and I was like, "That's so beautiful." It's so, like, such a
Mhm.
comfort. I could see how
Yeah.
that could be very healing.
Yeah, so don't feel bad about, I mean, it's easy for me to say that now, but because I've, like, halfway through my healing, but, you know and I just keep telling myself, because yeah, I have felt bad, like, I felt lost, like, "Whoa, I don't have a mom," or, "I have a mom, but she's not really a mom." Yeah. But then I just started looking into the Virgin Mary as my mom.
Mhm.
So then it's almost like being an orphan. Like once you realize that you're the mother that you looked up to all your life is really just a shell and it's like a fantasy mom that you made up.
Yeah.
And then when you realize that that's not her, you go into this grieving phase that, well, who am I if like it was a lie or who I believed I was growing up is not real. So then you start looking for yourself and then you need that nurturing.
Mhm.
But, like, taking comfort that, well, we have mom. We have a mom. It may not be the one here on earth. The Blessed Virgin is our mom, and just like you said, just being wrapped up in her mantle, and I don't know, it's hard for me to explain, but just it's almost like you're grounded once you accept that, it's okay if my earthly mom fails me, and I will pray for her healing as well. And maybe she can walk next to me and we can walk through the Blessed Virgin Mary so we can both be healed. So then you get your path and you just sit with the Virgin Mary and, you know, really that's where the healing starts to happen. It's like accepting things and then letting it go.
Mhm.
Not like throwing it away, like you're mad. I feel like when
Right.
you say like let it go, give it up, it's like, okay, just throw it. No, it's like it's handing it over to Jesus and the Virgin Mary. And then eventually, you'll get all the resources that you need. Because like for me, I really felt like I've been provided every time I need something. Either someone will call me or I'll meet someone and then like present things to me and things just fall into place.
Mhm.
And I do believe that for everyone, you know, ask and you shall receive. You will be given what you need at the right time. And all you have to do is just surrender.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really the key, is just surrender. I love the visual of you and your mom, like going hand in hand to the Virgin Mary and letting her heal you both. I think that is so, so beautiful because essentially, even as daughters of narcissistic mothers, there's still love there and you still
Mhm.
want the best for your mom. And so just envisioning that and just praying for her and asking for, Mary's protection over her probably be something that feels like you're able to do something that's helping her and then will help
Mhm.
your relationship in the long run.
Yes, and then you won't feel so guilty that you're turning your back on
Right.
your mom. Yeah.
Are there situations where it's inevitable that break has to come, or is it always redeemable?
I have heard there are some moms who can get physical and be verbally and emotionally abusive. At that point, as hard as it is, you have to make a choice like what's more important,
Right.
your family, your children, or your relationship with your mom, which I mean, really, what kind of relationship it is. And
Mhm.
you can't fix her. She's going to want to be able to be fixed.
Yeah, anything that's going to put you or your children in a dangerous situation
Hmm.
or, being abused mentally or physically. I guess that would be
Yeah.
definitely the line where you would have to step away and say, someday if you ever heal.
Yes. In the
But
meantime, I can love you from the distance.
exactly, exactly. I'll call you.
Yeah.
So, well, this has been such a helpful conversation, Christy. I really appreciate you being here. So, before we close, why don't you just tell everybody where they can find you? And, if you have any resources, if somebody is listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, but I think I may have been raised by a narcissistic mother, or maybe they're listening and they're like, oh my gosh, am I a narcissistic mother? So, what resources do
Mhm.
you have that can help everyone who's listening?
Well, so first, if you questioned if you're a narcissistic mother, you're not, because the fact that you're even questioning yourself
Oh,
tells me,
boom. So you're okay.
yes, tells me that you're not because you care. When someone says, well, I'm not, I'm just like, okay, maybe question that. But yeah, if you go to healmaternalwounds.com, that's a quiz. And, that will get you thinking about like how you feel and what's happening. And then in the end, it'll like give you a score, like your readiness, like, okay, you're just seeking guidance right now, or you're ready for help. And then that will get you to my email list. And then we can keep in touch that way. I'll send resources and get on the wait list for a course for, let's rewrite your story from trauma to triumph.
That's beautiful. And then, of course, there's your podcast as well. So I'll leave all the
Mhm.
links to these things below because you got them to me. And yeah, we'll just keep doing what you're doing. I think the more people that speak out about this, the more awareness there will be and the more healing there
Mhm.
will be. So thank you so much.
Oh, can I just say something to like
Absolutely.
for sobriety? I mean, so that's one way, like you had mentioned, we all choose how we cope. And for some women, it's like it's immersing themselves in work, or for some people it's drinking, and it's that someone had told me before, it's the way you punish yourself. It's like the
Mhm.
poison that you drink, and they're not even handing it to you. You're the one who is like grabbing it and giving it to yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah, so once you remember that, every time you pick up something, or it's destructive, I guess, like, if is it even fair to say that, that's poison? Because
Mhm.
essentially it is, if you think of it as poison.
Mhm.
You know, just imagine them handing it to you, and you just hand it back to them and just say, "No,
Mhm.
not gonna let you do this to me."
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a really good thing. I like that. Like they hand it to you and you hand it back to them. That's a really good thing to like visualize and think about. But yes, it really is. It's like if you're harming yourself, because of them. You're harming
Mhm.
yourself because you're trying to deal with whatever the effects and the wounds that they, you know, inflicted on you. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's such a good thing. So thank you. I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Okay.
All right. Well, you have a great day, and I hope everybody checks out your podcast and all of your resources, and we'll talk to you again soon. Well, that does it for this episode of the Catholic Sobriety Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I would invite you to share it with a friend who might also get value from it as well. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. I am the Catholic Sobriety Coach, and if you would like to learn how to work with me or learn more about the coaching that I offer, visit my website, thecatholicsobrietycoach.com. Follow me on Instagram at the Catholic Sobriety Coach. I look forward to speaking to you next time. And remember, I am here for you. I am praying for you. You are not alone.